Welcome to today's episode, where we dive into a gripping psychological thriller that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Today, we're talking about The Perfect Divorce, the second book in the Perfect series by best-selling author Jeneva Rose. Known for her sharp storytelling and jaw-dropping twists, Jeneva Rose has once again crafted a suspenseful tale filled with secrets, betrayal, and shocking revelations. In The Perfect Divorce, we follow Sarah Morgan, a once successful defense attorney who thought she had finally moved on from her troubled past. She's remarried, has a daughter, and is ready to leave her previous life behind until everything comes crashing down. After discovering her husband Bob's infidelity, Sarah files for divorce. But what should have been a clean break turns into a dangerous game of manipulation, suspicion, and hidden truths. As the investigation into her ex-husband Adam Morgan's old murder case is reopened, and Bob's mistress suddenly disappears, Sarah finds herself at the center of a new and even more sinister mystery. With shocking twists at every turn, The Perfect Divorce explores just how far people will go to protect their secrets, and how dangerous it can be when the past refuses to stay buried. Stay tuned as we break down this thrilling novel, discuss its biggest twists, and uncover what makes Jeneva Rose's storytelling so compelling. Let's get started. Sarah Morgan was once a highly successful and well-respected defense attorney. She gained national attention when she defended her ex-husband, Adam Morgan, in a shocking murder case over a decade ago. At the time, Adam was accused of killing his mistress, but thanks to Sarah's skills in the courtroom, he was acquitted. Despite her professional success, the trial put an enormous strain on their marriage, and soon after, Sarah and Adam divorced. Wanting to leave her painful past behind, Sarah decided to make major changes in her life. She stepped away from her career as a defense attorney, no longer wanting to deal with criminals or high-stakes cases. Instead, she chose a new, quieter path. She eventually met Bob Miller, a man who appeared to be everything she needed: stable, kind, and trustworthy. Unlike Adam, Bob was not involved in the legal world, which made Sarah feel safe. They got married and started a new chapter together. Over the years, Sarah and Bob built what seemed like a perfect life. They had a beautiful daughter and a comfortable home, and Sarah tried to convince herself that she had finally found happiness. However, deep down, she was never completely at peace. The ghosts of her past still lingered, and she never truly let her guard down. Adam's case was something she could never fully escape from. His name would occasionally appear in the news, and people still whispered about the trial. Despite leaving the courtroom behind, Sarah always felt like her past could come back to haunt her. Then, everything fell apart. One day, Sarah discovered that Bob had cheated on her. The betrayal hit her hard. She had given up so much to build this new life, believing that she had finally moved on, only to realize that the man she trusted had broken their vows. Unlike many people who might hesitate or try to fix their marriage, Sarah didn't waste any time. She immediately decided to file for divorce. She was determined not to stay in a relationship built on lies. However, what Sarah thought would be a straightforward divorce soon turned into something far more complicated and dangerous. Secrets began to surface. Tensions escalated, and Sarah found herself once again trapped in a situation filled with suspicion and mystery. Her past was not as far behind her as she had hoped, and soon she would have to face the consequences of decisions made long ago. One evening, Sarah stumbled upon undeniable evidence of Bob's infidelity. Whether it was a misplaced receipt, a suspicious text message, or simply a change in his behavior, she knew without a doubt that he had spent the night with another woman. At first, she felt a wave of disbelief. Bob had always seemed like the reliable, loyal type. But as the truth sank in, anger and disappointment took over. Unlike some people who might hesitate, try to forgive, or give their spouse a second chance, Sarah didn't waste a moment. She had been through enough betrayals in her life, and she refused to tolerate another one. The very next day, she met with a divorce attorney and began the process of ending her marriage. Bob, on the other hand, was caught off guard. He hadn't expected Sarah to act so quickly, and he certainly hadn't prepared for the consequences of his actions. What followed was a tense and bitter separation. Bob tried to apologize, claiming that it was a mistake, a one-time thing, but Sarah wasn't interested in excuses. She knew that trust, once broken, could never be fully repaired. Bob's attitude soon changed. He became defensive, accusing Sarah of overreacting, of wanting to punish him. Their once peaceful home turned into a battlefield, with arguments erupting over everything from finances to child custody. As the legal process moved forward, Sarah realized that Bob wasn't going to let go without a fight. He started challenging her at every step, trying to negotiate terms that would benefit him, delaying proceedings, and making things as difficult as possible. What should have been a simple divorce between two adults quickly became a war of pride, resentment, and control. But just as Sarah was bracing herself for a long legal battle, something even more shocking happened, something that made their personal conflict seem small in comparison. The woman Bob had slept with suddenly went missing. And before Sarah could even process what was happening, both she and Bob found themselves at the center of a much bigger, far more dangerous situation. Just as Sarah was dealing with her messy divorce, an unexpected twist from the past resurfaced. One she thought had been buried forever. A new piece of DNA evidence had emerged, linked to the murder case of Kelly Summers, the woman her ex-husband, Adam Morgan, had been accused of killing over a decade ago. The police, now armed with this new information, decided to reopen the investigation. This revelation sent shockwaves through Sarah's life. Though she had successfully defended Adam back then, the case had never truly gone away. People still speculated about what really happened that night. Had Adam really been innocent? Or had Sarah's legal brilliance simply helped a guilty man walk free? Now, with fresh DNA evidence, the police were eager to re-examine everything, and this time, they weren't ruling anything out. Sarah suddenly found herself thrust back into the public eye. Reporters dug up old news stories. Social media exploded with renewed interest in the case, and whispers about her role in Adam's acquittal began circulating again. Even though she was no longer practicing law, people still associated her with the scandal. To make matters worse, the new evidence raised questions about Sarah herself. Investigators began looking at her past actions more closely. Had she known more than she let on? Had she manipulated the trial to protect Adam, not because he was innocent, but because she was involved in something bigger? The possibility of being implicated, even indirectly, terrified her. Meanwhile, Adam, who had remained out of her life for years, suddenly reappeared. He reached out to her, insisting that he was still innocent and that they needed to talk. But Sarah wasn't sure if she could trust him. Was he looking for help, or was he trying to drag her into his mess once again? As the investigation intensified, Sarah's problems began to pile up. Not only was she dealing with her bitter divorce from Bob, but now she had law enforcement breathing down her neck, old wounds being reopened, and secrets from her past threatening to destroy the new life she had built. And then, as if things couldn't get worse, the woman Bob had slept with disappeared without a trace. Suddenly, Sarah found herself caught in the middle of two major investigations, one from the past and one from the present, and in both cases, she was dangerously close to the center of it all. As if the reopening of Adam's case wasn't enough, another shocking event sent Sarah's world into further chaos. The woman Bob had cheated with, Rachel Carter, was reported missing. At first, Sarah wasn't sure what to think. When she heard the news, a part of her felt indifferent. After all, Rachel was just a stranger to her. But soon, as more details emerged, she realized that this was more than just an unfortunate coincidence. The timing was suspicious. Rachel disappeared shortly after Sarah had filed for divorce, and now all eyes were turning toward Bob. Police launched an investigation, questioning Bob about his relationship with Rachel. He denied any involvement, claiming that their affair had been nothing serious and that he had no idea what had happened to her. But Sarah knew better than to take his words at face value. Bob had already proven himself to be a liar. Soon, rumors began to spread. People speculated whether Bob had something to do with Rachel's disappearance, or worse, whether Sarah herself was involved. After all, she had every reason to hate Rachel. She had just discovered Bob's infidelity. She was going through a bitter divorce, and now, the woman responsible for breaking her marriage had vanished without a trace. To the outside world, it looked suspicious. The tension between Sarah and Bob escalated. The police questioned them both separately, trying to piece together a timeline of Rachel's last known movements. Sarah found herself caught in yet another scandal. First Adam's murder trial, and now this. Everywhere she turned, she was surrounded by suspicion, and she didn't know who she could trust. But things took an even darker turn when Sarah discovered something chilling. Rachel's last known location was dangerously close to their home. And when she started looking into Bob's recent activities, she realized there were gaps in his story, things that didn't quite add up. Had Bob done something to Rachel? Was this just another tragic coincidence? Or was Sarah now living with a man capable of something far worse than infidelity? As the days passed with no sign of Rachel, Sarah found herself facing a terrifying possibility. She might not know the man she had married at all. With Rachel Carter still missing, and police investigations intensifying, the tension between Sarah and Bob reached a breaking point. Their once civilized divorce had turned into a high-stakes psychological war, each of them trying to outmaneuver the other while keeping their own secrets hidden. Sarah, despite her anger toward Bob, couldn't ignore the growing suspicion that he might have been involved in Rachel's disappearance. His nervous behavior, the inconsistencies in his alibi, and the way he kept dodging questions all pointed to something sinister. But the more she pushed for answers, the more defensive and erratic he became. One night, Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands. Using her legal expertise, she began digging into Bob's past, looking for anything that might explain his recent actions. What she found sent chills down her spine. Bob wasn't the man she thought he was. He had been hiding financial problems, secret accounts, and a history of questionable business dealings. Worse, he had a pattern of relationships that all ended in strange or sudden circumstances. At the same time, Sarah also discovered new information about Adam's reopened case. The DNA evidence that had surfaced didn't match Adam, but it did connect to someone else, someone dangerously close to her. As the police pressure mounted, Bob's true nature started to reveal itself. He became more controlling, more paranoid. Sarah realized he wasn't just trying to win their divorce. He was actively trying to manipulate the entire situation to his advantage. He wanted to frame her, but Sarah wasn't going to let that happen. She started playing her own game, gathering evidence, setting traps, and turning the tables. She knew she had to outthink him, just like she had done in the courtroom all those years ago. Then came the final twist. Rachel's body was found, and with it, the last piece of the puzzle fell into place. The truth about Bob, Adam, and the tangled web of lies Sarah had been caught in was finally exposed. But by then, it was no longer just about justice. It was about survival. At its core, The Perfect Divorce by Jeneva Rose explores themes of trust, betrayal, and the consequences of past actions. Through Sarah Morgan's journey, the novel raises thought-provoking questions. Can we ever truly escape our past? Sarah tries to move on from her high-profile career and failed marriage, but old wounds resurface in unexpected ways. How well do we really know the people we love? Both Adam and Bob hide secrets, making Sarah question everything she thought was true. What happens when deception turns dangerous? Lies, manipulation, and hidden motives create a deadly game where trust can mean the difference between life and death. So, what do you think? What stood out to you in this book? Let's comment.